Greetings knitters, it's Mimi from Pastiche Knitwear, living in coronavirus isolation. So I'm making a bunch of new videos while I have the time, and hopefully some of them will be helpful to you so that you can keep knitting while we're sharing this sequestration together. So today's video is on the sloped bind off, which is an alternative to a standard bind off. And in the sample, we're going to be replicating the binding off of a neckline edge. Now in a round neckline like this, there are several stitches at the center of the garment that are bound off initially. You can see them here on this piece. And then each side is shaped with successive bind offs or decreases. And so let me show you this little sample that I've done in the standard way. When you do it in the standard fashion, it produces this stair-step effect, which is not tidy, and it makes it harder to pick up the stitches when you're working the neckband to finish it. So one simple trick that we do can take care of this, and we'll have this beautiful even sloped bind off. So I want to show you how to do that today. So let's work our sample. So on this sample, I've already bound off the center stitches that make up the bottom of the neckline here. And now we're going to shape the neckline with a series of bind offs at the neckline edge. So we're going to work a 2-stitch bind off at the neck edge 3 times to match what we worked on the other sample. So in order to do that, I've already done, this is my initial bind off for the bottom of the neckline. So I'm just going to work this then to the end of the row. And we're going to come back and we're going to work the bind off at the beginning of the next row that we begin on the neckline edge. So we'll just work our way back. Now the key to the slope bind off, it's so simple. You're going to love it. There's nothing really difficult about it. When you purl back before the next row that is going to be bound off, you leave the last stitch unworked and turn the work. So I have 1 stitch on my right hand needle. That is the first stitch of what our bind off is going to be. And remember, we're going to bind off 2 stitches here. So I like to do the SSK bind off, which I have another video tutorial on how to do that. It's very straightforward. I won't go into it here. So I'm going to bind off. I'm going to slip that one, bring the left needle tip through the front of both of those. Now I tend to tighten up, choke up on this quite a bit so it isn't loose. And I'm going to knit these off together. That's my bind off number 1. And I'm going to bind off another one. So that is my first set of 2. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to work to the end of this row, turn it around, and when I come back, when I purl back, I'm going to purl up to the last stitch, but I'm going to leave the last stitch unworked in advance of the bind off that I'm going to do on the other side when I begin. So I'm going to leave that last stitch unworked and turn the work. Now I'm going to bind off 2 more stitches. This unworked stitch is the first of the 2 bind offs. So I'm just going to slip 1 stitch. I'm going to bring the left needle tip in the front of both of those stitches. Give that a little tighten up. Knit them off together. We'll do 1 more. Slip as if to knit. Left needle tip through the front of both. This is the SSK bind off. I'm going to knit that off together. Then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do 1 more set. Same thing. Work to the end. Turn the work around. When I'm purling back, I'm just going to leave the last stitch unworked. So I just have this little bit. Turn it around again. I'm going to slip 1 as if to knit, left needle tip through the front of both and bind it off. If you want to do a standard bind off where you knit 1 and then pass that stitch over, that's perfectly fine. I just prefer this method. It works with any bind off. Okay, so now let's take a look at it. So how about them oats, huh? So if we compare our original with what we get on this, far superior, much easier to pick up, and so easy to do. So Just follow the instructions that your pattern gives you, and you will be doing this in no time, having a great result, I have no doubt. Thanks again for watching. Hope these videos are helpful for you, and if they do, please consider subscribing. Thanks a lot.